What's going on, guys? It's your boy Yoshi Mizukana coming back at you with another video. This has kind of been long overdue as I finished this game, I think a week or two ago. This is my DuskFade review. Now, full disclosure, I did play this entire game on stream. The entire playthrough is available on my YouTube channel, but if you see a part or you see a moment in this video, you're like, man, this looks really cool, I highly recommend you go check it out. Okay, so DuskFade is a third-person action platformer adventure game. It's developed by these people named Weird Beluga Games. And essentially what we have here is a spiritual successor to games such as Ratchet and Clank, Jak and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy, and has a bit of a Kingdom Hearts vibe to it. And the main character is inspired by Treasure Planet. So that's kind of the big selling point of the game. Now, when it comes to the gameplay, this game is very platforming focused, very first and foremost. I can honestly say that when I was playing this game, I was a little disappointed with the lack of depth in the combat, but I'll get to that in a second. So essentially, a big focus on this game is the platforming. There's a lot of platforms moving. There's a lot of intricate jumps, timing that needs to get right. Essentially, what you're playing is a platformer from the early 2000s era of PlayStation 2, Xbox, and Nintendo, or not necessarily Nintendo. So it has a sort of a very strong 2000s vibe to it. That's the best way I can put it. So when it comes to the platforming, you get access to a double jump, a dodge roll, among many other abilities that also enhance your platforming. You eventually get a grappling hook and a sort of shield for grinding on rails. And I will say overall that the platforming is without a doubt one of the best parts of the game. It's very fluid. Personally, I enjoy the sort of floatiness that it brings. It's not like a very tight platforming game, which is not really what I expected going in. It feels a lot more freeform, a little more flexible in terms of what you can do. I will say, though, there are some jumps that I thought would require a long jump, but it turned out I just needed a double jump, and I overshot it way too much and ended up dying. So there's a bit of a frustration on that part. But since this is an indie game, I'm not expecting perfection here. So moving on, let's talk about the combat. Now, I'll be honest with you, the combat is not necessarily a highlight, and I don't think it's really a low light either. It's just kind of okay in there. So you do get a couple of abilities that allow you to have some variance in combat, like a spell that is like sort of like a shotgun blast, and you get another one that allows you to stop time and attack enemies. And there's also a star shooting spell that allows you to like charge up this attack, and you can shoot a bunch of stars at a bunch of enemies and they all go ahead and attack. So there's a bit of variance, but essentially what it's going to boil down to is a 3-hit combo, which is your sword. Eventually you'll unlock the pendulum weapon, which is kind of a morph of your original sword, and it creates a heavy attack, which there is a bit of variety there. However, the enemy variance in terms of these new abilities and attacks doesn't really give you much depth. Essentially, you'll just kind of be autopiloting through the combat a lot of the time. Now, speaking of combat, let's just kind of talk about the enemy design. The enemy design, I think, is probably one of the weaker aspects of the game. A lot of they're called inkies, or like ink ghosts, or whatever you want to call them. They're just kind of whatever, in my opinion. There's a little bit of variance you can get out of them, but honestly, once you see one sort of purplish blob, you kind of seen them all. However, I do want to give a big shout out to the boss fights in this game. There's at least, I think, 4 sort of mini bosses that are inks or inkies, whatever you want to call them. And then there's like 4 major bosses plus the 5th and final boss at the end of the game. Now, I did play on the hardest difficulty, which was Master Clockworker, for most of the game. However, I did not play Master Clockworker on the very last boss. I had to actually turn it down because Unfortunately, for some reason, you have to restart a whole section of the boss if you lose on the second phase. So to avoid that frustration, I just turned it down to normal and I finished it no problem. So now when it comes to the difficulty of the game, like I said, I did play on the hardest difficulty, and the bosses gave me actually a real challenge. I will say that there's a couple of weird things with some of the bosses that kind of make it unfair, but overall I'd say it definitely made them a lot more fun. If you play this game on normal, honestly, you'll just breeze right through it, and there's not a whole lot there. So if you like a challenge, I recommend going the hardest difficulty. I think it makes the game a lot more fun, but again, that's just a personal opinion. So moving on from that, I did want to talk about the graphics just a little bit. I do sort of love this sort of Play-Doh-y, Kingdom Heartsy vibe that it's got going on. Personally, I really do enjoy the environments. I love the sort of varied weathering conditions that we got. We got a lava level, we got a snow level, and we got a beach level, which is very reminiscent of Kingdom Hearts Destiny Islands, by the way. I just want to point that out. And of course, you're gonna have a clock-like level, a bunch of clock-like levels, I should say, in the game. The whole main theme around the game is the clockwork aesthetic that it's going for, which is also a very great concept. I just want to give a big shout out. The clockwork sort of concept and like artwork, it's gorgeous. One of the best parts of the game for sure. Speaking of, that's kind of a good transition to the story. Now, I will honestly say this is probably it's probably the lowest point of the game if you put it all together. It's not necessarily bad in a way, it's just kind of there. It's kind of by the numbers sort of plot, so you kind of already know what you're getting into, and the sort of twists that they input into the game, I felt it was kind of easy to see from the beginning. I mean, that's kind of sort of subjective, not everybody's going to kind of get to that conclusion as quickly as, say, me or somebody else. But I will say that if you're going into this without the expectation of a story, then you might have a more decent time. However, I just don't think these types of games can just stand on platforming alone, unfortunately. It needs a little bit of something more. So, just go into it with that in mind. And I'm not going to sit here and say that it's not bad. I don't think the story's bad just because it's simple. I do think that I wish there was more to it, because a lot of the world building and the lore is very, very fascinating. However, I just think that maybe if they get a shot at a sequel, they'll expand upon it and it'll make the game and universe far more interesting, because there are some very good bones to what the story can become. However, it's kind of your basic plot, which I'll be honest, I was kind of okay with the story, and then by the end I was just kind of over it. So that's just something to take with a grain of salt. Now, and the voice acting, I want to touch on this just real quick. It's not super great. I think Zirian's okay. Cuckoo, however, really starts to get on your nerves after a while, because it's sort of like Navi from Legend of Zelda. So I'll be honest, I wish there was an option to sort of turn down the amount of things Cuckoo could say, and truthfully, I just was kind of over it by the end, because it was just kind of getting grating. But the big thing I will say is that the color scheme and the atmosphere of the game is fantastic. I feel like each world is you're allowed to like live in it and enjoy it, and you can just kind of have fun. Now, this is also a collectathon sort of game, so unfortunately, this game is based on collectibles to a degree when it comes to your upgrades. Now, you can obviously go and 100% it by after getting all of your power-ups and your special abilities and everything like that. You can revisit levels and miss any collectibles that you may have missed. However, I'll be honest, there's not a lot of incentive for that, because truthfully, the collectibles don't really mean a whole lot. One of them is a little card that you get for like artwork, which is okay. I mean, the artwork is still cool. It's kind of a lot to go for, that. Another one is a bunch of music boxes for the game's music, which I will say the music, in my opinion, is a little underrated. I actually love the sort of orchestral soundtrack that it was sort of creating. Another one is your upgrade gears for your skill tree, which I'll just be very honest with you guys. It's very it's probably my least favorite aspect of the game. The skill tree has no depth. Once you get everything, like the most of the good abilities, like they're really not that hard to get. And honestly, once you've gotten one, and it doesn't add much to it. So I will say there's not a lot of impact, in my opinion, on getting all the gears. So and then there's eventually another unlockable that you get that's not tracked in any of the levels. So you kind of have to like go to different levels and just kind of look for them. And then obviously you have your mana or your health upgrades. It's not called mana, I don't remember what it's called, but you get your mana collectibles and your health upgrades. You get enough of these and you gain another bar or whatever. So it's not stuff that I was like trying to go back and get after I've beaten the game. Honestly, I actually stopped collecting to just finish the game because I was already getting tired of going and collecting things. So definitely it's a sort of grain of salt when it comes to the collectibles, because I do love the collect aspect of it, and it was fun trying to get some of these, but some of the harder difficulty platforming sections, it didn't really reward you very well with one of those. It kind of would just reward you with shards, which is like the sort of currency within the game. And the game developers decided to make the most interesting choice when it comes to collectibles and shards, is that you get a cap on how many you can collect. So once you hit 9,999, you couldn't collect anymore, which is quite honestly one of the most baffling decisions I think I've ever seen a collectathon game make. Personally, it just kind of killed a lot of my ability to collect, because once I got those, what was the point of me exploring? Because then I'm just wasting shards. So I will say that was a very, very disappointing aspect, was that there was a cap on collectibles. Honestly, I hope that's something that gets patched or changed, because I don't know what they were honestly thinking when it came to that. So now there is a bunch of positive aspects to the game. Like I said, I think the world and the lore is very interesting. The platforming is fun once you really get into it. The combat, like I said, it's not bad or annoying, it's just kind of there. And then the story is just kind of what you sort of take away from it. I definitely think it's aimed more at sort of a younger audience, but I still think, even me being a 32-year-old person, I still got something out of it, even if it was sort of rudimentary and sort of base level. But the aspect of 100%ing the game is kind of a pain. There's no mini map, there's no indication where the collectibles are in the level, and the levels are quite large, so you'll end up getting lost quite a bit. And I don't think it's worth going to 100% because of the sort of, like, I guess I'm not sure. I'll leave that up to you guys, the viewers, but overall, I'd say the game's at least a solid 7 out of 10. I'm a little more biased personally because I love 2000s PS2 like games like this with platforming sections and combat and all that stuff. And also Treasure Planet's one of my favorite Disney movies, so of course I have to shout that out real quick. But overall, I'd say if you are a product of that era like I am, I think you'll get some enjoyment out of this when it comes to the gameplay aspects and the character Zirian. He definitely has a sort of 2000s vibe to him. If you like platformers that are very freeform and sort of fluid with the movement style, then I think you'll like this. But if you want something with like a good story, an in-depth combat system, a lot of character customization, I would honestly either stay away until maybe they push some updates to fix some of this, or potentially wait for a sequel, because I think they have something fantastic to build upon when it comes to this game. And I really look forward to seeing if they do DLC or something else along those lines in the future. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is my DuskFade review. Again, I did play the whole game on stream, so if you are interested in checking that out, go ahead and go to my channel. I have it in a playlist titled DuskFade Full Playthrough. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I hope whatever you're doing, wherever you are, whatever time it is, you're just having an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.